A woman is bullied into apologizing to her husband's spoiled, wealthy best friend. A woman who hides behind designer bags and fake dignity. But when she finally speaks, her apology becomes a subtle, elegant dismantling of everything that friend pretended to be. Her words don't scream, they slice. And the truth she drops in that moment triggers a chain reaction that crumbles the friend's luxury image, exposes hidden betrayals, and forces the husband to face consequences he never imagined. I never imagined a single apology could become the moment my entire life shifted. Not because of the words themselves, but because of who was forcing me to say them and who those words were meant for. My husband stood in front of me that evening with a tone that didn't sound like him anymore. It sounded like someone rehearsing a script written by someone else. His eyes weren't calm. They carried pressure, embarrassment, and something darker, fear of losing a woman he wasn't even married to. He said, "You're going to apologize to her. Tonight." No explanation. No discussion. Just a command. And her was his best friend. A woman wrapped in luxury the way others wrap themselves in pride. She carried handbags worth more than a month of rent and walked as if the floor owed her something. I'd tried, for months, to stay quiet around her. She was the type who didn't fight with you, she fought above you. She attacked you with glances, with whispered comments, with the silent cruelty of someone who enjoyed watching others shrink. But that day, she crossed a line she shouldn't have. A line she thought no one would dare respond to. She said something about me, softly, like a secret meant to sting, and I answered back. Not loudly, not rudely, just honestly. And honesty is the one thing people like her can't afford. Since then, she'd been playing the victim, painting herself as the fragile princess wounded by my rudeness. She told my husband a version of the story soaked in tears, trembles, and fake innocence. And now he was standing here, demanding I bow to her ego to keep the peace. I didn't argue, not because I agreed, but because I wanted to see what she would do when someone walked into her world without fear. When we reached her mansion, yes, she called it that, I stayed quiet. Not out of submission. Out of curiosity. The grand entrance was designed to impress. The marble floors, the gold accents, the giant chandelier shaped like a waterfall of crystals. But when you looked closer, you could see the truth. The chandelier's crystals were clouding from age. The gold accents had scratches that no polish could hide, and the marble was chipped at the corners. Everything was trying too hard. Just like her. She stood at the top of her staircase like a queen ready to sentence a criminal. Her dress shimmered, her jewelry sparkled, and her expression screamed satisfaction. She wanted an audience for my humiliation. Her friends were already seated, pretending they weren't there for drama, while their eyes glowed with anticipation. She smiled the moment she saw me. Not a warm smile, one that tasted like victory she hadn't earned. She spoke slowly, like she was dragging out every second. "I'm so glad you came to fix what you broke." My husband gently pushed my arm, a reminder of why we were here. A reminder of the role he expected me to play. But here's the thing about roles. They only work if the person agrees to stay inside the script. And I don't do scripts written by people like her. I stepped forward. No shaking. No shrinking. She expected me to crumble. Instead, I stood the way someone stands when they know the truth is their armor. She folded her arms, ready for my apology to soothe her ego. And for a moment, I let her believe that's exactly what was going to happen. "I'm here," I said softly, "because there's something that needs to be said." Her shoulders relaxed. She thought she'd won. The room leaned in. Every eye fixed on my next words. "I'm sorry," I continued. "But not for what you think." Her smile froze. The room's breath paused. Even my husband's hand stiffened beside me. I kept my voice calm. Not sharp, not dramatic, calm enough to cut through the room like something dangerous wrapped in silk. "I'm sorry," I repeated, "that you spend so much time trying to look rich that you've forgotten how to actually feel important. I'm sorry that every outfit you wear, every accessory you flaunt, every story you exaggerate, is a reminder of how desperately you're trying to convince the world that you have a life worth envying." She blinked. Just once. Hard. The smile she'd practiced cracked at the edges. "I'm sorry," I said again, "that you thought my silence meant you were above me. But I've seen the cracks you hide behind expensive lighting. The loneliness you cover with diamonds. The insecurity you dress up as confidence. And I won't apologize for recognizing what's real." Her friends stared at her now, not at me. Her perfect image trembled. The illusion she'd built so carefully, the persona she protected so aggressively, it was unraveling. My husband whispered my name, a warning, but I didn't stop. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. "I'm sorry," I said one last time, "that the world you've created is so fragile that the truth shakes it." You could feel the shift in the air. Her face wasn't angry, it was terrified. Because someone had finally spoken the one thing she'd feared her whole life. Her luxury wasn't luxury. Her confidence wasn't confidence. Her power wasn't power. It was a costume. And I had peeled it back with nothing but words. She opened her mouth to reply, but for the first time since I met her, she had nothing. No insult. No comeback. No performance. Just silence. A silence louder than any argument. Her friends turned their eyes away from her, each one pretending they hadn't been part of the show. My husband stepped closer as if trying to regain control, but it was already lost. Because the moment truth enters a room, every lie becomes visible. And in that room, with all its glitter and pretense, she wasn't the queen anymore. She wasn't the rich friend. She wasn't the powerful one. She was just a woman standing in a spotlight she could no longer survive. She looked at me with a mixture of shock and fear because she finally understood what I had known all along. It wasn't my apology that would destroy her. It was her reaction to it. And she reacted exactly how fragile people do. She broke. Section 1 ends here. Section 2 will take this moment and turn it into the downfall, the exposure, the emotional storm, and the psychological twist you want. The silence in that room didn't stay silent for long. It stretched. It tightened. It wrapped itself around every person present until their carefully managed expressions started to crumble. And in the center of it all stood the woman who had built her entire identity on the belief that no one would ever dare speak to her the way I just had. Her lips trembled first, not from sadness, but from the sudden terror of losing everything she'd used to feel superior. My husband reacted exactly as I expected. He tried to salvage her dignity before even checking if mine was intact. He stepped toward her with words rushing out of him, something about how I didn't mean it and how emotions were high. He tried to speak for me, explain for me, undo my words for me, as if my voice belonged to him. But she wasn't listening to him. She was staring at me, not with anger, but with the shock of someone who'd just been seen for the first time. The room had shifted, and she could feel it. Her friends, her loyal audience, her backup chorus, were avoiding her eyes. Their loyalty was dissolving in real time. Because people cling to power, not to the person pretending to have it. And when her power cracked, their distance grew. She took a shaky breath, then another. Trying to reassemble her confidence like broken glass, she still wanted to call a mirror. You think you know me?" she whispered. It wasn't a challenge. It was a plea. And that told me everything. She wasn't angry that I spoke. She was angry that I wasn't wrong. When someone builds their world on illusions, the truth feels violent. Her voice rose an octave, that familiar defensive pitch. "You don't understand anything about my life. You don't know what I've had to deal with." I didn't interrupt. I didn't step closer. I simply waited. Because this wasn't about me anymore. This was about her finally facing the thing she'd been running from behind diamonds and gold-plated confidence. Herself. She turned to her friends as if begging them to confirm her version of reality. But their silence cut deeper than my words. One of them looked down at her cup. Another pretended to adjust her bracelet. A third simply stepped back. A queen without a court is just a woman in a fancy dress. My husband finally stopped trying to speak when he realized no one was listening, not even her. He stared at me like he was seeing someone new, someone he didn't know how to categorize. The shock on his face wasn't confusion. It was fear. Because he'd never expected me to speak with the clarity of someone who had stopped seeking approval. She finally whispered, "Why would you say all that? Why would you try to humiliate me in front of everyone?" My voice stayed calm. "I didn't humiliate you. I told the truth. And the truth only humiliates people who are pretending." Her eyes glistened, not with tears of sadness, but with the fragile panic of a person watching their last layer of armor fall. She tried to step back, but behind her was nothing but the railing of her staircase. And then, without warning, something in her broke open, not outward, but inward. The kind of break that makes a person suddenly honest, if only for a moment. "You think my life is perfect," she said, her voice trembling. "You think all of this means something. You think these people actually care about me." No one responded, not even my husband. She let out a breath that sounded like surrender. "I've spent my entire life trying to make sure no one sees the cracks. Do you know what happens to people like me when the cracks show? Everyone leaves." She glanced at her friends, each one suddenly still. Everyone always leaves. Her vulnerability didn't soften me, but it didn't harden me either. It simply revealed a truth I already knew. She wasn't powerful. She was desperate. And desperation disguised as arrogance is one of the saddest forms of loneliness. One of her friends finally spoke, her voice thin. "We're not leaving, we're just surprised." But her eyes said the opposite. Her eyes said, "I don't want to be associated with a sinking ship." The rich friend saw it too. That was the moment the real collapse happened, not from my words, but from theirs. She realized the people she flexed her luxury for were the same people who would abandon her the moment she stopped shining. She looked at me again, but this time not as an enemy, not even as competition. She looked at me as someone who had done the one thing no one in her life had ever done, spoken to her without fear or agenda. "You're right," she said quietly. The room froze. Even I didn't expect that. "You're right," she repeated. "I've built everything on appearance. I've spent years proving something I don't even believe anymore. And I forced you to apologize because I couldn't stand that someone finally said what I've been afraid of hearing." My husband looked confused, like the floor had shifted under his feet. This wasn't the script he predicted. He thought I'd be painted as the villain. He thought she'd scream, cry, blame me. He didn't expect her to admit the truth so clearly it silenced every accusation he'd prepared. Her voice steadied as she looked at him. "You know, she isn't the one who hurt me tonight. You are. Because you let me believe I was right when you knew I wasn't. You let me hide behind what I pretended to be. And you made her look small to protect my ego." He had nothing to say. His silence was louder than her shattered pride. She finally turned to me. No arrogance, no polished posture, just a quiet, exhausted honesty. "I don't need your apology," she said. "I needed your truth, even if it broke me." That was the moment the room flipped completely. The power she once held dissolved. The people she once controlled were suddenly distant. And the husband who once demanded my silence stood there, realizing he didn't know the woman he married anymore. Not because I changed, but because I stopped shrinking. The rich friend took a slow breath and said something I will never forget. Maybe this is what I needed. Maybe everything falling apart is the only way I can finally build something real." For the first time, her voice didn't sound rehearsed. It sounded human. The night didn't end with shouting. It didn't end with victory or revenge. It ended with truth, raw, unfiltered, and impossible to escape. And as we left her house, my husband walked behind me in silence, carrying the weight of everything that had shifted that night. The woman he tried to control had spoken. The friend he tried to protect had broken. And neither of them would ever see me the same way again.